Hello! Welcome back sa ating Business and Transfer Tax class. So tayo ay nasa Chapter 7, VAT on Importation, in Chapter 8 na, VAT and Income Tax on Individuals. So actually, this is yung last chapter ng VAT na. So next topic, tayo ay nasa percentage tax na, and then susunod na natin yung donors at saka estate tax. So kung kayo ay handa na, kumuha ng papel at ballpen para sa inyong notes. Ako pa rin ang inyong teacher, Romualdo Fernandez Credo. So let's start. Unahin na natin ang value-added tax on importation. So of course, let's discuss muna yung tax rates na mag-a-apply and then yung formula. So ang tax rate is still 12%. Ang value-added tax rate on importation. And of course, kapag may tax rate, kailangan may tax base kung saan natin i-multiply or i-apply yung formula, yung percentage, yung VAT rate on importation. So, ang tax base niya is landed cost or total landed cost. So, ano ba ibig sabihin ng landed cost or total landed cost? It means the invoice cost of the goods. So, yung cost of goods na in-import plus, so may dadagdag tayo, all the legitimate expenses of importation prior to the release of goods from the customs duty. So, lahat ng cost na mai-incur mo bago tanggalin yung goods sa Bureau of Customs will be added dun sa cost ng merchandise na magiging tax base natin. So usually, yung customs and tariff duties na babayaran mo pag nag-import ka ay naka-base daw sa quantity and volume. So syempre, kasama pa rin doon. However, when the customs and tariff duties are based on the value of the importation, kapag naka-base daw dun sa amount ng in-import, the tax base counterpart of the landed cost is the dutiable value of the importation as determined by the Bureau of Customs. So, Bureau of Customs ang magdedetermine ng dutiable value ng goods. Tapos, idadagdag mo pa rin yung legitimate expenses of the importation prior to the removal of the goods from the customs duty. So, ganun pa rin naman. Bureau of Customs ang magdedetermine ng dutiable value, yung value kung saan i-impose yung tariff and customs. Tapos, magdadagdag ka pa rin para makuha mo yung landed cost, magdadagdag ka pa rin ng all legitimate expenses prior to the removal pa rin. So, ibig sabihin, yung expenses na may incur mo after ng removal ng goods from the Bureau of Customs ay hindi nakasama sa tax base natin, doon sa landed cost na sinasabi. So these are yung typical expenses of importation. So please take note yung rule natin, kapag na-incur yung expense bago i-remove yung imported goods doon sa Bureau of Customs, part siya ng landed cost. So isasama mo siya doon sa cost ng goods para maging tax base mo na kung saan mo i-multiply yung 12%. However, if itong cost na ito, kahit sinabi nating part siya ng usual or typical expenses na nai-incur sa importation, pag na-incur mo na after ng removal, hindi mo na isasama sa landed cost. So, ito yung usual na nai-incur sa importation na expenses. So, of course, mayroong insurance sa goods. Para may nangyari may nangyari sa goods, siyempre, mayroon kang makukuhang amount na kapalit. Yung freight, usually, interest, stamps, sa mga documentation, kailangan mayroong mga stamps, fees na babayaran, bank charges. Kasi usually, kailangan sure yung payment. So, yung company kung saan ka mag-import, nire-require niya yung mga assurance sa bank. So, kailangan syempre, pag kinuha mo yung yung services na i-render ng bank, syempre may charges. Customs duties, customs brokerage fee, wharfage dues. Usually, yan ang kina-charge ng Bureau of Customs. So, mga customs dues yan na kailangan mong bayaran pag nag-import ka. And excise tax, if any, and processing fee pa rin pala. So, kasama din yan sa legitimate expenses. Please take note na ang guide natin is dapat yung expense ay ma-incur prior to the removal sa customs custody. Para kapag na-incur mo na after, so syempre hindi na kasama sa landed cost natin. On the computation of VAT on importation, a company made an importation of merchandise to be sold. The customs and tariff duties were based on the quantity of the imported goods, and the invoice cost was 4.5 million. Freight was 400,000. Marine insurance was 100,000. Legitimate expenses on importation prior to the removal from customs custody amounted to 500,000. So the question is, the tax on importation was. So let's compute kung magkano yung VAT on importation. So I'll give you 1 minute to compute. So ang tax base natin is total landed cost. Kasama na yung lahat ng dues na babayaran, related or direct expenses bago i-remove sa custody ng custom. So, ang VAT on importation natin is 660,000. That's 5,500,000 times 12% yung tax rate natin. So, paano nakuha yung 5.5 million na landed cost na tax base natin kung saan natin i-multiply yung 12%? That's yung cost of goods na 4.5 million plus yung other necessary cost prior to the removal ng goods sa custom. So that is yung freight, yung insurance, at yung other importation cost na 500,000. So that's 5.5 million. And again, 5.5 million times 12% equals yung value added tax on importation na 660,000. Another example, Mr. B made an importation of an article to be sold. The custom and tariff duties were based on the value of the importation as determined by the Bureau of Customs. The invoice cost of the importation was 4,900 and the freight and insurance was 300. The dutiable value of the importation was 5,000. All other legitimate expenses of importation amounted to 500. The value added tax on importation is, so I'll give you several seconds to think and compute for the answer. So the value added tax is 5,500 times 12%. That's 669 pesos. So in here, instead of using yung merchandise cost na 4,900, ang ginamit nating instead ay yung dutiable value of the importation kasi nga sabi natin kanina dun sa rule, kapag ang customs and tariff ay naka-base, ay ibe-base dun sa value ng importation or imported merchandise, we will be using yung Bureau of Custom will determine yung dutiable value ng ng goods imported. Kaya naman, so since naka-base sa value ang custom, tariff and custom, so we will be using 5,000 instead of yung 4,900. So ganun pa rin yung rule natin in order to determine yung total landed cost na tax base natin, idadagdag pa rin natin yung mga legitimate expenses of importation prior to the removal doon sa Bureau of Customs. So 5,000 plus 500 equals 5,500 and times 12%, ang VAT on importation is 669 pesos. Another illustration, Mr. Y is a VAT importer trader. He had the following transactions in a month. Sales, 2 million. Local purchases from VAT supplier, 600. Yung importation with the VAT payment, 50,000. The value added tax payable for the month was, so I'll give you several seconds to process and analyze yung problem. Bago natin discuss yung sagot. So, since ang question na is to determine yung value added tax payable, so, ang gagawin natin, we have to get yung difference ng output tax at saka input tax. So, unahin muna natin yung output tax, 2 million times 12%. So, that's 240,000. And then, yung input taxes, yung tax credits niya. Input taxes from local suppliers. So, that's 72,600 kasi yung purchases from local suppliers times 12%. And then, merong payment, VAT payments na 50,000. So, yung difference is 118,000 ang VAT payable. So, as we close yung Chapter 7, ito yung kanyang application. So, answer na lang yung mga questions and yung solutions will be uploaded dun sa link na ibibigay ko for this activity. Now, let's go to Chapter 8, Value Added Tax and Income Tax on Individual. The rules here apply only to individual in business or practice of profession. So, so itong rules na i-discuss natin will not apply sa mga employed na individual. So, yun lang may business or yung mga nagpa-practice ng profession. So, pag purely compensation income earner siya, of course, hindi ito mag-apply. So, if the gross sales or receipts of an individual from business or practice of profession exceed the VAT threshold of 3 million, the income tax formula for him will be, so once na nag-exceed ng 3 million yung kanyang gross receipts or gross sales. So, ito yung mag-a-apply daw sa kanyang formula. So, gross sales or receipts, add non-operating receipts, total, then less mo yung deduction for itemized costs at saka expenses. Or, meron kang option to deduct instead yung 40% na optional standard deduction. So, mamimili ka, hindi mo pwedeng i-avail yung dalawa, yung itemized deduction at saka yung optional standard deduction at 40%. So, you, of course, namimili ka kung ano ang mas kung saan magbe-benefit yung iyong business. So, kung marami kang records naman at may proof ka doon sa mga expenses mo, so pwede mong gamitin yung itemized deduction. Pero kung hindi siguro maganda yung records mo, since kung hindi maganda, di wala kang masyadong mai-deduct, might as well gamitin mo na yung 40%. Kaya nga lang, pag hindi ka nag-record, baka may penalty sa BIR. Pag nakita nila na yung books ay hindi complete or hindi siya updated. So, yun nga, equals taxable income. So, ang income tax mag-apply ay, ang income tax rate na mag-apply is yung graduated income tax rate na from 0 to 35%. Yung table natin. Yung tax table natin. So, the individual is subject to income tax at graduated rates and, of course, masasubject pa rin siya ng value added tax at the same time. Kasi nga nag-exceed na siya ng 3 million. Kaya mandatory VAT taxpayer na siya. Ayaw niya o hindi, magbabayad na siya ng VAT in addition dun sa kanyang income tax. Let's have an illustration. Mr. A is in business with a gross sales of 4 million pesos and costs and expenses of 2.1 million. Because of the gross sales exceed the threshold of 3 million, his internal revenue tax for the year will be, so magkano kaya ang tax ni Mr. A? So, ang kanyang taxable income is 1.9 million. Computed, 4 million minus 2.1 million. Since nag-exceed na siya, yung kanyang gross revenue, nasa 4 million, nag-exceed na siya ng 3 million levels, hindi na pwede rin mag-apply yung option na 8% on gross sales. So, ang mag-a-apply ay yung kanyang graduated income tax rate. So, pag ginamit mo yung graduated income tax rate of an individual, na-discuss na natin to sa tax 1, gamitin mo yung tax table. So, ang tax ng 1.9 million is 48,000. If the gross sales or gross receipts of an individual from business or practice of profession did not exceed the VAT threshold of 3 million, so kung hindi nag-exceed daw yung gross receipts or sales ng 3 million, the taxpayer would have been subject to 3% percentage tax. So, dun sa example natin kanina, kung hindi nag-exceed yung kung hindi 4 million yung kanyang gross receipts or gross sales, ang mag-apply sa kanya instead of VAT is yung 3% na business or percentage tax. Pero since nag-exceed siya, 4 million na siya kanina, VAT ang nag-apply sa kanya plus income tax. So, ganun din dito. Pag hindi nag-exceed, hindi nga siya masasubject to VAT, pero may percentage tax naman na papalit. In addition doon sa income tax na babayaran pa rin niya. So, yung income tax niya will be computed ganito pag hindi nag-exceed ng 3 million. Remember, Gross receipts na hindi nag-exceed ng 3 million, add other operating expenses, ang total. Then, total pala. Then, yung deduction niya, 250,000. 250,000 lang. So, kasi ang 8% is based on gross. So, hindi mo na i-deduct yung cost and expenses. So, instead, ang i-deduct mo is yung minimum amount na exemption dun sa tax table natin na 250,000. So, pagka-deduct mo yun, multiply mo na ng 8%, yun na yung kanyang income tax. Pero kahit na hindi nag-exceed ng 3 million yung kanyang gross sales or revenue, kung magkakaroon mag optional VAT registration siya, ito naman yung magiging case niya. Yun sa or. Gross sales or receipts, add non-operating gross receipts, total. Then, pwede mong i-deduct yung itemized or standard deduction since ikaw nga ay optional VAT registration. Pero kapag nag-optional VAT registration ka na, hindi ka na rin pwedeng mag-avail ng 8%. Instead, ang mag-a-apply sa'yo ay yung graduated rates na ng individual. Okay, so this is it. Thank you very much. Don't forget yung inyong application, yung problem that will serve as your quizzes must be uploaded dun sa desired link na provided. Doon lang